So when it comes to these, why do assumptions and constraints matter for us? What is task two really looking to solve when it comes to assumption and constraint analysis? Again, your team assumes vendor delivery by July 1st. That assumption is sitting in the plan, but nobody's challenged it. Nobody's talked about it. Nobody has looked at how are we going to do this. But they've also haven't asked what happens if we don't. So now we got to think through the cascading effects that this happens. Because if a vendor misses that July 1st date, your integration team can't start, your testing window compresses, your go live date moves, your client agreement is now at risk. And you might be looking at a financial penalty, like I said, for my July 1st date. So one assumption, unchallenged, constraint, an entire chain reaction. And if any of that was sitting on my critical path, then I'm definitely having a lot of problems. So this is about, so one of your jobs, one of the things that you need to look at when you're looking at assumption and constraint analysis is that you're trying to predict this cascading effect that it's going to have on your project objectives. And this can't be theoretical. You are literally walking the dog, as I would say in the military. You're walking the dog on how are we going to accomplish this? How are we actually, what are those cascading effects? And this is one of the most valuable things that as a risk professional you can do for your organization. And it's one of the most important things that anyone can do when it comes to understanding those assumption constraints and those impacts on your project. So your role here is not always to identify these. Again, that's why we have subject matter experts. We bring them in. But our role is to facilitate the actual analysis over these assumption constraints. Ask the why. Ask what happens next. Because the best risk teams are the ones where someone is always willing to say, what are we assuming here? What is limiting us? So if on the exam, you see a scenario where the team found a risk, but skipped reviewing the assumption log, make sure you revisit it. Look at that assumption log. Don't just jump into response planning. What assumption analysis did you put into place? What assumptions have you already analyzed and thought about? All right. Now let's move into task three. Task three has to deal with documenting risk triggers and thresholds based on the context and the environment.